In a past video, we jokingly referred to the Zeltrons as the horniest aliens in the galaxy, but of course, that title could belong to none other than the Zabraks. Despite his limited screen time in Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, Darth Maul, perhaps the most famous Zabrak of all time, became a fan favourite. So much so that the writers proceeded to shoehorn him in whenever possible, and we're here for it. There were many other Zabraki stereotypes Maul fit, but in many ways, he was very different to most of his Zabraki brothers and sisters. Due to their history, the Zabraks developed in several very interesting ways. In today's video, we'll be talking about their unique features and how the Night Sisters created an entire subspecies.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
Zabraks were a near-human species of alien from the planet Iridonia. They were easily recognizable thanks to their tattooed skin and horny noggins, which was something shared between the Iridonian Zabraks and their later subspecies, the Dathomiri Zabraks. You see, while most of the Zabraks came from Iridonia, a planet in the Mid-Rim, some had once settled on the planet Dathomir, the Rancor world of the Outer Rim. There, they had bred with the human Night Sisters, creating the Night Brothers, a group of male Zabraks who answered to the matriarchal Night Sisters. Regardless of their homeworld, all Zabraks shared a few common characteristics. First, they had two hearts, which allowed for extra oxygen flow to their muscles. This was likely the reason behind their impressive physical strength and endurance. They were also obligate carnivores, meaning they could only consume meat, hence their pointed fangs. While important, neither of these were really what made the Zabraks stand out. That would have been their horns and tattoos. Many Zabraks had vestigial horns, meaning they had little keratinous growths on top of their heads between the forehead and the base of the skull. In the Iridonian population, the males had larger, more developed horns than the females, while in the Dathomirian population, the females had no horns at all. Going by most horned animals in our galaxy, we can only assume that they had once been used in combat over mates and territory, which explains their thick skulls, meant to protect the squishy brain from repeated headbutts, and why the Dathomirian females didn't really have them. Important to note was that they weren't born with these horns. Rather, their horns began growing when they hit puberty. The other flagship characteristic of the species were their facial tattoos. Who doesn't remember Maul's stunning black and red face? Both Iridonians and Dathomirians tattooed their faces. Iridonians tended to go for more discreet tattoos, such as lines or paler face colorings, while Dathomirians liked bold contrast. Just look at Maul's black on red or Savage Opressor's black on yellow. Some sources say the tattoos denoted familial ties or birthplace, and others state they were just for the aesthetic. What we do know is that Zabraks didn't get their tattoos until their rite of passage, which they undertook once they hit puberty and their horns had grown in. Certain characteristics varied between the different subspecies, such as skin color, hair growth, and horn size. Depending on the subspecies, Zabrak complexions could be anything from yellow to peach, tan, brown, or even dark red. Horn size and shape also depended on the subspecies, as did eye color. Some Zabraks had perfectly normal eye colors, like green, while others sported more interesting colors, like purple or gold. Finally, depending on the subspecies, Zabraks could grow hair on top of their heads, or were completely bald. Hair could only grow on top of their heads though. All Zabraks were completely unable to grow eyebrows and facial hair, much like that one friend we have, minus the eyebrows. Another trait they all shared were their personalities. They were very self-assured and confident people who prided themselves on their tenacity and independence. Often, they went to great pains to maintain positions in society that afforded them the most freedom. Other times, it led them to rebelling against oppression, much like they did when the Galactic Empire tried to enslave their people. Other species saw them as incredibly obstinate, hot-headed, and frequently prideful to a fault. Regardless of this outward appearance, Zabraks weren't actually elitist. They simply pursued what others thought impossible out of a desire to do great. Competition was seen as a natural thing to be encouraged as it pushed everyone to improve. Ironically, the Iridonian Zabraks were considered the more aggressive and warlike than the other subspecies, even more so than the Dathomirians. This was due to Iridonia's frankly terrible conditions, which forced many Zabraks to leave in search of more hospitable planets, and turned those who remained into cantankerous Spitfires. But then, if we had to live through everything they did, maybe we'd be cranky too. According to legends, between 30,000 and 25,000 BBY, during the time of the Rakata Infinite Empire, the Zabrak species was created. We say created and not evolved because unlike other species that evolved over time, the Zabraks were allegedly a byproduct of the Rakata playing with life. Back when the Rakata began losing their connection to the Force, the survivors of their species retreated to the prison world of Belsavis, where they began experiments to restore their connection to the Force. One of these experiments was a machine known as Usha, or the Mother Machine. She was a device that was capable of mixing and matching different body parts and traits to create entirely new life forms that were Force sensitive. The Rakata created several entirely new species, among them the Eshkar, the Twi'leks, and the Zabraks. Now, we have to note that this Rakata creation myth could very well be true. The Rakata certainly experimented enthusiastically. However, many species the Mother Machine claimed to have created predated her, so it's difficult to discern which legend is true and which was simply another tall tale. In any case, after they first appeared, we lose track of the Zabraks for a short while. What we do know is that they were a spacefaring species that colonized many other worlds. By the time the Duros encountered them, they had already established 5 other colonies. Iridia, possibly named after their homeworld of Iridonia, was one of these worlds, and Elom was possibly another. Many xenoarchaeologists believe the Elomin, who share many characteristics with the Zabrak, are descended from them. By the time the Republic came into contact, they had 8 colonies. At this point, the Zabraks joined the Republic and remained loyal members long after the Galactic Empire took over. Due to Iridonia's location, it connected the inner to the outer rim, which meant it was often one of the first worlds to be targeted during wartime. That's why it was no surprise that it was sucked into the old Sith Wars around 4000 BBY. During the 50-year conflicts, Iridonia saw many battles. During the Great Sith War, a battle on its surface turned out to be a great victory for the Galactic Republic against Exar Kun and Ulic Qel-Droma's forces. Later on, during the Mandalorian Wars, the Mandalorian Crusaders conquered many of the Zabraks' colony worlds in the Outer Rim. This prompted many Zabraks to join the Republic military in an effort to get revenge on the invaders. In 3963 BBY, the Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders targeted Iridonia directly, resulting in a months-long occupation before the Republic managed to drive them off. Immediately following the Mandalorian Wars was the Jedi Civil War, during which both the Republic and Sith Empire fought hard to claim the planet. Iridonia was the staging ground for many assaults on both sides, though it was mainly occupied by the Sith at this time. Due to being under Sith control, Iridonia's colonies split from their mother world at this stage, becoming independent worlds. Even after peace was restored, Iridonia held significant Sith interest. The Brotherhood of Darkness, a Sith cult that directly fought the Jedi during the last days of the Republic's Dark Age, chose the planet to operate a Sith academy. After the 7th Battle of Ruusan, the Zabraks were finally left alone for some time. During this post-Ruusan period, they were able to continue their spacefaring and establish new colonies. When the Clone Wars broke out, Iridonia remained loyal to the Republic, but the Confederacy of Independent Systems attempted to sway at least some of its colonies to their side by staging political insurrections and riots. This led to what was known as the Great Debate, a political dialogue between Iridonia and its colonies that resulted in all of them unanimously choosing to remain loyalist. We mentioned earlier that the Zabraks were stubborn and independent, so it should come as no surprise that they didn't take kindly to the Galactic Empire's rule. They supported the Galactic Republic and its so-called democracy, but the moment the Empire rose and began oppressing the galaxy, most Zabraks joined the Rebel Alliance. Even after the New Republic fell to the First Order, they continued to resist the Sith tyranny and joined the Resistance. Overall, it's safe to say that the Zabraks were some of the galaxy's most tenacious and hardy people. They endured everything from slavery to the Rakata to Sith interference and intergalactic political messes. Despite all the hardships they faced, however, they faced the world with their heads held low, all the better to headbutt the living daylights out of any problem that came their way, and we think we could all learn something from that. So that's our little recap of the Zabraks. What do you think? Would you like to see a dedicated video on any particular Zabrak? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below, and as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.